husband had an abnormal cell issue that had come back after being in remission for 10 years. But this time it had spread and was showing up in his bones. And he was working with a medical doctor, doing all those treatments, but it wasn't getting rid of the abnormal cells. And I just knew this was going to help him. I knew I'd been divinely guided. And I put him on it, and he was drinking twice the amount of the average person. 2.5 months after he started drinking it, the doctor says it's time for an in-depth scan. We go in, he gets the scan. Then the doctor says, come in, I'll give the results. Well, we go in, and, of course we were nervous. And the doctor opens up the folder with the results, and he's just staring at them. And I was like, uh-oh. And then he just says, well, this is interesting. There's no abnormal cells showing up in the bones. He could not articulate how in the world that had happened. But he'd also already made it clear he wasn't interested in learning about anything that was not a pharmaceutical drug. So I did not waste my time or my breath. Normally, I would share. Well, we were, of course, so happy. And my husband continued to drink over the next year. He felt great. He looked great. His numbers were great. And then the doctor says, time for another in-depth scan. Well, this time we go in and the doctor just blurts out, you are a miracle patient. There's no abnormal cells showing up anywhere in the body. And that was about 2.5 years ago. And we are still in that same situation. And, I always tell people, I hope this helps you understand why I am so passionate about this, because I don't think my husband would maybe even be alive today if he didn't have these redox molecules. And I would never want somebody to suffer because they did not know about these redox molecules. I can also tell you that over the last 3.5, 4 years, I've met so many people with the same story. My husband's testimony is not rare. And that's such an amazing thing. And, so of course, is in my traditional naturopath business. Now, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a naturopath. You can think of me as a health coach. The job of a traditional naturopath is really education. And so you get to take, when I work with somebody, you get to take this education, this knowledge, and do your due diligence and do with it what you like. But I can tell you, I've helped so many people. And I'll tell the liver story first, and then I've got a couple of new ones to share with you. Right after I started using this, I get a phone call from a woman in Portland, Oregon, and she says, Kathy, you don't know me, but your colleague suggested that I call you. I'm in a dire situation. My liver enzymes have jumped up to the 900s. Now, your liver enzymes are supposed to be between 10 and 25. That's the functional range. And she was working with a medical doctor doing all of their treatment. Enzymes were not even coming down by 1 point. She was working with a naturopath physician, spending thousands of dollars doing IV treatments, and her liver enzymes were not coming down by even 1 point. So some of my colleague friends just told her, call Kathy. Kathy does a lot of research. She might have something. And I said, yes, I do have something. So she was literally in a life or death situation. So I quickly, within a couple of days, ramped her up to drinking a half a bottle a day. 1 week later, she calls me in tears. Kathy, this is a miracle. My liver enzymes went down by 150 points. The next week, I got another text, another 150 points. And then every week after that, her liver enzymes went down between 100 and 125 points until they were back down to normal. Now, I want to point out something. At $33 a bottle, this was a bargain for her. A bargain. She was spending thousands of dollars on IV treatments that weren't helping. I mean, they were probably helping, but they weren't bringing the enzymes down at all. This is the power of redox molecules. Okay. If you follow me on Instagram, I didn't post this on TikTok because I was afraid of getting kicked off, but I did post it on Instagram, and I think I posted it on Facebook. I got a message on Facebook from a woman named Cece. And she had found me just on social media, didn't know me. And she had a son with, I'm trying to be compliant, severe spectrum issues. Now, I have to set up the story for you because, a lot of times I work with somebody and they come to me and they go, Kathy, I've done everything and I'm not getting results. Well, have you done redox molecules? No. They add in the redox molecules and that's when they get the real results. It's the missing link. Well, this woman was living in Houston at the time. She worked a full-time job. Her husband worked a full-time job and her 3-year-old son was in daycare. And the daycare said, well, your son is missing 2 of those childhood injections. And if you don't go get them, we're going to kick you out. So she took him to the pediatrician, got the 2 injections. 4 days later, he no longer could speak. And he was banging his head against the wall all day long. She took him back to the doctor and he said, no way did that injection cause that. She's like, but he was healthy before when I brought him in. And he said, it's genetic and there's nothing that can be done. Well, thank goodness she didn't take no for an answer. And she did her own research. And she did find somebody to work with. And they put her on a very strict protocol. This child, 3 years old, in fact, Cece, the mom, had to quit her job because this child could not eat any processed food. If it came out of a box, a bag, a can, or the freezer, he wasn't eating it. Everything had to be pristine. He was on supplements to open up pathways. He was seeing a chiropractor every week. She spent thousands on a power plate to vibrate his body, jumping on a mini tramp. And she was doing, I don't know if you've heard of it, a chlorine dioxide protocol that has to be administered every single hour. She had been doing that for 2.5 years. The only improvement she saw was he could now speak single words, just a handful, and he was no longer banging his head against the wall. Well, she had remembered hearing something about redox, and then she found me. And she immediately started him on the redox molecules and was drinking twice a day. Within 2 weeks, now he's gone from 3 to 5.5 years old. In 2 weeks, he was able to start reading, and he was calmer. Even the chiropractor couldn't believe it. Well, she said, I'm ready to do what I call the flood the body protocol to see if I can get more improvement. So, she started giving him 2 ounces every hour. After the first day, all of a sudden, he was speaking in complete sentences. Mommy, I want to go outside. Mommy, I'm hungry. I mean, she just was on the floor, could not believe it. And then the second day, after drinking the molecules, for the first time in 2.5 years, he did not exhibit the obsessive compulsive disorder. She said that, he would just say Noah's Ark all day long, all day long. That was his obsession. For the first time, not saying it at all. And then when the little sister grabbed his toy away, in amazement, she watched him regulate his own emotions. Normally, he would have been on the floor screaming and crying, but instead, he just let it go. I still, it brings tears to my eyes because I know what these parents have gone through. I've got so many friends who have been in that situation. And now she's got real hope that he's going to make a full recovery.